Hi and welcome everyone. Good evening and welcome to another interview actually this week. We are very honored to welcome Stefan Risthaus, the author of Arkwright, the card game, and many other games, of course. So hi Stefan, how are you doing?
Hi, Raphael. Thanks. I'm fine.
All right, great. So, well, let's dive into it actually. We have a couple of questions that we wanted to ask you tonight. And the first one was, yeah, about board games. Did you actually grow up playing a lot of board games? And if so, if you did, did you create maybe your own rules for board games as you grew up?
Actually, when I was a child, we have played in our family the usual games like the Game of Life or
Yeah,
Monopoly,
yeah,
and we played a lot of card games like Gin Rummy, Romy in Germany.
yeah,
In school, we played a lot of Skat, um, and
yeah.
the real Euro board games were later coming into my life. Um, about 1990 or something like that. Civilization, the board game, was one
Yes.
of these because I'm interested in history and economic mechanisms. So
Hmm.
these times there were no rules that I have changed or created own games. This was later, about 1990, 1992 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Okay, very cool. And so what inspired you to actually start creating like your first own game?
Well, what was the reason why I began to initiate games by my own? I don't really know. I just started sometimes to have some ideas and
Hmm.
started to think about more and more about it and made some prototypes and played with my friends. So
Yeah,
I cannot say this was the moment when I started to become a game
yeah,
designer.
right. It just kind of came naturally to you.
Yes.
Yeah, because you have a very different profession, obviously, outside of creating games, right?
Yes.
So, um, so yeah, what was actually the first published game? I mean, your first design was actually published, sorry.
Yes, this was Ostia, the harbor of Rome, with the
Yes.
Mayfair game and Produto in 2005. And it was started developing in about 2002 when I was going to Göttingen game designer
Yeah.
meeting and um, learning about game development and learn people, know
Yeah.
people
No
that
people there.
were in the business, and so it developed from step to step to become a more and more interesting hobby.
So how did it feel to actually have your first design actually published and seeing people play your game?
It was great. It was a little bit disappointing because it was announced for the Essen Fair,
Yeah.
and the game did not arrive in time. So we had
Oh, okay.
only one prototype at the booth in this year. So it was exciting to see people playing the game, but it was not the real feeling to have the box in your hand, and so
No,
it was a
no,
little bit
exactly.
disappointing.
So have there been actually a lot of designs that you've created that weren't published or
Yes, there are some games that I have developed and that were not published for one or the other reason. But I think not that many. The most games I'm really interested in, and when I have done the step to make a prototype, are at a stage where I'm convinced that it will be a good
yeah.
game. And there's a lot of ideas that I have, and I think about it and try to make a prototype. And then I see, well, that does not match with the mechanics or the theme or whatever, and I stop developing. But I think there are no more games I really worked on that are not published than those that are published.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that's great. So let's talk a bit more specifically about Arkwright, the card game that just, had a Kickstarter this summer. What was the inspiration specifically for this game?
Yes, it's a game of economics, and I'm um, yes, I always were interested in I always were interested in economic mechanisms and market mechanisms, and so the board game was. made as an inspiration from a competition of making a simulation as
Yes.
a board game for pupils. Um,
Okay, that's
and
interesting.
it
Yeah.
should be played within 90 minutes, 2 school lessons.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we started to read a small book. When I say we, it's my wife and me because we
Yeah.
all always talk about our games and help
Yeah.
each other in developing them. Um, the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung has a small booklet and was the initiator of this competition. And we
Okay.
read this small booklet from them about simple explaining economic mechanisms. Like
Yeah.
if you make a price higher, you will sell less because the
Yeah.
goods are not that attractive.
Hmm.
And this was the start. I started to developing based on these simple rules
Yeah.
of market mechanisms. And the project of competition was stopped at a very early stage, but I started to thinking about what can I do with all the work I have already done,
Yeah.
and I developed the game independently from the competition
Hmm.
and independently from the time limit.
Yes, I would
And
imagine.
so this was a very big step forward to say, well, it does not have to be finished in 90 minutes, but it can be a longer game.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, the board game was very long, and lots of people were interested in the game Arkwright, the board game, but
Yeah.
they complained about the length and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
complexity. And so the next step was to make the game more available for a broader audience.
Hmm.
And I tried to work on a new game that is still Arkwright, but more
Yes.
streamlined, less complex,
Yeah.
and in particular the action selection system with the tokens and payment for each action and
Yeah.
dependency between how much you paid and what you can do with your action, and all these things were streamlined. The shipping rules were very were
Yeah.
made easier,
Simplified. Yeah.
uh, so the game can be played in 90 minutes, even
Yeah.
with 4 players. So this is a short story
Yeah.
of
Yeah. No, of course.
a
There's
long
way more to
development
it,
over
but
years.
no, it's interesting because I mean I have played both, and it's very much that, the card game, even though, yeah, there's still a board and everything, but it really much feels like a streamlined version exactly of the board game. So how do you go on indeed? Because we talked a little bit, about your process and stuff, but how do you like how much time goes over I have an idea or I have a concept to a prototype? And do you always start with a theme in mind, or is it more of an idea of a concept or a mechanic even that grows into a board game?
Usually I start with the theme actually. Of course, in games like Arkwright or Gentes, it's the
Hmm.
theme that is very important to make the players being involved in the game.
Yes.
Um, my earlier games like Ostia or Monuments were always triggered by the theme, but some other game designs, of course, are not triggered by the theme. Like Level X is a very abstract
Hmm.
game,
Yeah.
so it's not the theme that is bringing the game forward here. Um, but usually the theme is something that I am starting with, and then I try to get the core, the heart of the things that are going on in real life, like in Arkwright, what
Yes.
is really happening in life, and what can be transferred into game mechanisms without having all the details of the real world that you cannot transfer into a board game. So you have to reduce all the things to one core or two core mechanisms,
Yeah.
and otherwise it would not be working.
Yeah. No, no, that's
So,
okay.
how long does it take from the
Yeah.
idea to the prototype? It depends. It depends really on the game. Um, some games I have in my mind for a long time and almost ready as a prototype in my head, and sometimes I have more the idea and try to start making a prototype, and then I see, okay, there are some things I did not think over up to now
Yeah.
because I just had the mechanic in my head and some of the theme aspects. But I drive a lot of time with the car to work and back, and there is enough time to think about games and how will I do the
Yeah.
prototype. So it takes some months to have the first idea and then start with creating a prototype. I do not want to waste too much time with making a prototype that does not work right from the start
Yeah.
and have to be redone too often and
Hmm.
adjusted and so.
And do you work on multiple prototypes at the same time usually, or do you just really focus on one game and then move on to the next one?
Um, Hard to say, but most time I'm working on one project because I do not have so much time to have more projects at the same period of time to work on. But like last year with Tea or
Yeah.
Coffee, it's
Yeah.
a small game that can be done at the same time when I'm working on Arkwright, the card game, or another big project that needs from time to time of some weeks to just stay and wait for new ideas and developments, and
Yeah.
then with fresh ideas you can improve the game more. But it is not possible for me to work on more than one big project at the same time.
Okay, cool. And are there, like, if you look at the games that you have created and have been published, which are the ones, or maybe the one that you're the most proud of, and why?
It's difficult to say, but actually there are two that maybe something like a highlight. One
Yeah.
is actually Gentes because I
Yes.
think it's a very uh, quickly played Euro game that offers a lot of options for variants and for diving into the theme more than it is in the now published version because
Yeah.
uh, we have, of course, reduced it to have a
Yeah.
really good game in a really good short period of time to play. But maybe you have heard of it. We are working on more variants developing the system to a series of games, probably. We
Yes.
will call it Epos, and
Hmm.
maybe we will hear about that later in the year or next year. But
Hmm.
we are very
Excited
interested
about
in
it.
this project. Yes, and the other one is tea or coffee because
Okay.
it's hard to believe, but I think it's very difficult to make a really good small game with only about one mechanism because
Yeah.
maybe it's trivial or it's not a simple game. So, but I think this has been a good idea from Heike and myself to
Yeah.
have a good game in a short time and something like a gateway game for non-gamers. And of course, it's very special because it's the first really together project with my
Yeah.
wife Heike. So it's
Yeah, yeah. No,
something
if
special.
of course if it's that personal, but I think it's true. It's uh having, I think, a compact game and a small game maybe based on one idea, but that really works. I think it's challenging because I can imagine if you have so many ideas, it's easier to put it in a big game rather than condense it to something very essential. All right.
Yeah.
So looking at maybe the work of other designers, who are, for instance, designers that whose work you really admire, and maybe anyone that you'd love to make a game with and design a game with in the future?
Oh, this is a very difficult question. There
Yes.
are so many good and excellent designers out there. But I like playing Euro games, so
Mhm.
Wolfgang Kramer and Rainer Knizia are one of those designers that I really like. And um, I like also the games of Friedemann Friese.
Yeah.
Um, to be more exact, I like what he's doing. I do not like all of his games, but he's
Hmm.
so creative, like the
Yes.
504 game series,
Uh-huh.
or what he's doing is always something special. So,
All
this.
right.
Turning to the question, if I could think about working together with one of those, not really. I'm not a team player in this regard, I have to say.
Yeah,
Beside
that's fair.
working together with my wife, of course, but
Yeah.
I think I need to be free in when I am doing something. And if you have a partner, of course, in any way, in some way, he will expect that it will be done uh, some work and the project will be moved forward. And then I would not be able to use the time as I want and I need to do with my main job.
Yeah, yeah, no, of course. I mean, it definitely has its challenges, I think, as well. So you mentioned obviously tea and coffee before, but actually talking about because Game Brew is very much known for having a stand with our beer and our drinks, and sadly, we're not be able to do it this year, but we hope to be back
Yeah.
next. But what is your favorite brew? Let's say, would it be coffee, tea, or beer?
Yes, indeed, it's coffee, and
Okay.
in particular latte macchiato. Maybe
Oh, okay.
you have seen the illustrations in our game Tea or Coffee, and
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
it's because of that, and because Heike also prefers that. So it's not beer. Sorry.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, again, it's a brew as well, so it's all good. So latte macchiato for you. Okay, good to remember. Cool. Well, before we wrap up the interview, is there anything else maybe that you would like to share with the audience about, game creation or designing games in general that we didn't ask?
No, not really. It's just it's exciting to be part of the whole. Some people say industry.
Yes.
It's just exciting to see people playing games, and I think it can be a little help to enjoy life in these times. So I would say stay healthy and continue playing games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. Well, Stefan, thank you so much for sharing this. And obviously, having made Arkwright the card game with us, we're very excited to bring it to the backers next year. So thank you a lot. Enjoy the rest of your evening. So as for us, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope that you really like this interview. We will have other interviews as well throughout the week. So make sure to check the schedule on the Spiel.Digital website and on our social media. So thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.